Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome to the Gary Neville Podcast on a significant Super Sunday here in North London. Gary, what have you made of what looks like the end of the road for Arsenal in the title race?
I have to say, well done, Brighton. Well done, Brighton. Wow, what a performance. I know they've played well all season, but that was just something that you could hold up as a coach and say, that's the standard that I've always wanted from a team that I coach in my life. And De Zerbi will have been... He'll never forget that performance, I don't think. I think that's how strong I feel about it, of what I've just seen, playing against an exceptional Arsenal team. But you're right, the title has gone today for Arsenal. It was already hanging by a thread, but that's all finished. I thought today was a game of two potential banana skins. Manchester City going to Goodison Park, Arsenal having Brighton, who are a difficult, awkward opponent.
Manchester City going to Goodison Park with Real Madrid round the corner as well.
Yeah, and they were so professional, and it was like a stroll in the park, and Everton are fighting for their lives. And I just wonder the impact. The more I think about it beyond the game, the more I think about the impact that will have had on those Arsenal players' legs. I talked about heavy legs in a title race when the other team plays first and wins, or the boost you get when they play first and drop points. I think what we saw today was an Arsenal team that might have got their hopes up a little bit with Everton, that performance against Brighton in midweek, Goodison Park, maybe City dropping leaving a few players out, which they did. They left 3 or 4 players out, and maybe they thought that they could just get back into the title race today. And when City have gone and won 3-0, that's filtered obviously through to the Arsenal players, and it's maybe had that impact on the legs that sometimes it does have, and they've just been a little deflated. They started quite quickly, but once Brighton started to pop it around and play and show that confidence and authority, it just became a lot more difficult a game for Arsenal than they wanted and needed.
You mentioned Pep Guardiola made some changes. In a sense, was the difference between the squads on view today, because Arsenal without Saliba, as they have been at a significant end of the season, without Zinchenko, and Martinelli going off after 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think what we shouldn't do is rewrite history. Arsenal have dropped 12 points in the last 7 games. That's too many. So I can sympathise with them for losing at City. I can sympathise with them for losing at Anfield.
Drawing at Anfield,
dropping points even today against a really good Brighton team. But the West Ham Southampton games you struggle with. They found it too much for themselves in this last 7 games, and they'll look back upon that and reflect. I thought they reset last week against Newcastle. I thought that was a real positive moment for them. But today I think the actual reality of that City winning at Everton, I think, has just hit them like a ton of bricks. And it's ended up whereby they're playing against a team who just don't care. They don't care. I played football for a long time, Martin, in an exceptional team. But the freedom of expression that these Brighton players play without, from the back, from the goalkeeper to the centre-backs.
The goalkeeper's only played 10 or so Premier League games.
How? He's there shooting. I'm thinking...
Jason Steele we're talking about, yeah.
He's chilling out, that guy. I'm like, he's played 10 games, he's chewing his gum, he's popping it into midfield, he's drifting it over players' heads with his left foot. And you're like, show a little bit of nerves. You're away at, one of the best teams in the country, but they have literally come here and paid no attention to who they're playing against, the stadium that they're playing in. They have played absolutely beautifully against Arsenal. Their performance is absolutely brilliant. I'm mesmerised by what I've seen today. I know they've played like that at times this season, but that's a beacon.
But they lost 5-1 at home on
Monday.
Yeah.
I watched that. Yeah. So I've got that fresh in my mind. I obviously, watched them against Manchester United, obviously beat my club. And you're thinking, we know they're capable of a good performance. Watched them in the semi-final of the Cup against United, where you think, well, there was a bit of that today where you thought, well, they're not going to get the goal. They're going to look good, but they're not going to basically get the fruits of their labour. But once they scored...
But that was an odd goal, wasn't it, with Kivier dropping onto his knee as the ball came in, and the player who was supposed to be marking scored.
How harsh? I'll ask you, how harsh should I be on Kivier? Because 10 years ago, as Gary Neville just retired from football, played for Manchester United, I'm getting killed for that. Any defender's getting killed for that in the Manchester United team if you basically sat there. Unless he wasn't that injured. You've got to just...
Well, if he'd gone off, I think we'd had more sympathy.
Yeah,
but the truth is he was sprinting within a minute.
Yeah, he was running after Mitoma in that channel, wasn't he? I've got very little sympathy for him. Kivior will have to look at that and think, nah, come on, you've got to do better than that. You've got to get up. That's where you've just got to dig in and get up, and basically, even if you're on one leg, just make sure that you hold... I mean, the smallest player on the pitch has headed it in the back of the net, free in the box. So it was a poor moment for him. It was a poor moment for Arsenal. But Brighton deserved it. Brighton deserved it. I know Arsenal had some good chances in the first half and they were playing like the away team, but Brighton deserved it. And then from that, you think, well, how are Arsenal going to adapt? How are Brighton going to play now they're 1 up? But they just carried on going on and on. They got better and better, and they were toying with them. Brighton were toying with Arsenal for the last 25 minutes. They were popping it round them. They were knocking it over their heads. It was absolutely sensational. I cannot speak highly enough of what I've seen here from Brighton today. But in the end, the title race has just been too much. People will point towards an injury to one player, Saliba. I can't listen to that. I'm sorry. With 20-odd players in your squad, I cannot listen to that. City have had players missing over the years. Liverpool have had players missing. Every team in a title race has a player missing. If they'd had 5 or 6 players missing, I would have said that's really unlucky. They've not had to experience that. And even today, Martinelli goes off, Trossard comes on, Zinchenko's not playing, Tierney's on. So it's not as if you're talking about massive drop-offs. I know Martinelli definitely is a better player than Trossard, but Trossard's more than capable.
He actually was complicit in the second goal, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Against his whole club.
He was. He gave it away in a poor area. But that was the actual thing about the game. Not only did Brighton keep the ball under pressure at times from Arsenal and pop it through them, when Arsenal were trying to play out, they really asked a lot of Arsenal, Brighton, the way in which they pressed and tried to win the ball at the pitch. They were so aggressive in getting their foot in and moving up the pitch together as one. Their centre-halves pushing in, and Arsenal just couldn't cope. And in the end, they didn't have the energy. I think that was as much about energy, mentality, as it was about quality today for Arsenal. They just lost their legs at the vital moment. And look, City have put them under pressure, but City were always going to squeeze them. And that's what happens in every title race. You never win your first title easy. It may have happened, but you just don't. It's a struggle. It's a massive struggle. And you need vast experience to come through that. I always wondered whether Arsenal had the experience. I always doubted.
Well, you've said in every podcast we've done, you doubted them. Yeah.
I always doubted their experience to cope at the end when their young players would feel the pressure. And I think, to be fair, we've seen Gabriel, Partey, and a couple of others, Xhaka, have their weakest time of the season.
Bukayo Saka's had a bad run as well.
Yeah, I think they've lost their form. And the experienced players have not been able to settle the younger players who I think inevitably were always going to struggle in this period through pressure. The experienced players have just not been quite there for them. I've repeated it for 25 years. The class of 92 did not win that first league because of the class of 92. We won it because of Roy Keane, because of Steve Bruce, because of Gary Pallister, because of Eric Cantona, and because of Peter Schmeichel. We had a spine running through that team that was absolutely rock solid. They were like brick. You couldn't break them. They were unbelievable. And around them, you had Beckham, Scholes, Phil Neville, Gary Neville, Ryan Giggs. You had lots of young Nicky Butt. You had lots of young players scattered around them. And we were finding it tough. We were finding it really tough. Our legs started to go a little bit. You're under pressure a little bit because you think, reading the media, Sky Sports are doing promos every single 10 seconds saying title race is on, the running's coming, watch the big Super Sunday. And you're thinking, that's us. And you can't get away from it. It consumes you like you wouldn't believe. And these Arsenal players are walking down the street and every Arsenal fan saying to them, you're going to do it, you're going to do it. And that just hits you like a ton of bricks. And you experienced players just stay still. They stay calm. They settle everything down. They make sure they get you through difficult moments. And that's what I always doubted. The Arsenal spine has wobbled at the most difficult time. They were never capable, in my mind, of holding it together. But that's not to say they can't in the future. They can. You can develop that experience. You can add a couple of players to it. And Mikel Arteta's a young manager as well. So all's not sort of lost here. I did think it was a really good day for them last week at Newcastle, where I thought that they really did show some signs of improving. But today, I think the hammer blow of the City victory has just hit them, aligned with the most sensational away performance from Brighton.
Well, let's go to the other end of the table, but still on the south coast. Southampton relegated in some disarray, it seems.
Yes, yeah. I mean, everyone said Southampton and Bournemouth 6 to 8 weeks ago, and Southampton have been unmoved in the sense that I watched them away at at Brentford on a Saturday. I went to watch Brentford. I was invited there, and they really struggled. And I thought Bournemouth would go with them, and I thought Nottingham Forest would go with them, and that might not happen with Nottingham Forest. It certainly won't happen with Bournemouth. But Southampton have been a The recruitment has been a strategy of bringing in lots of younger players and younger managers, inexperienced managers.
And getting rid of quite a lot of the backroom staff before. Ralph Hasenhüttl, when a good friend of ours, Dave Watson, was a casualty.
They cleared out a lot last summer, tried to re-look and reset the club's philosophy, but they had a very good philosophy. That's not to say they won't come back. I mean, we love Southampton as a club. They produce many great players. I don't want on a day like today send a little warning sign to Brighton, but Southampton were the beacon that everyone looked at for a number of years when they could recruit players, they could sell them, they could replace them, they could still finish in decent positions, still stay in the Premier League, and all of a sudden it just becomes too much one season, and Brighton will be aware of that. And I don't want to really, to be fair, deflate Brighton's day today, but there is that warning sign out of, obviously, these types of clubs can get themselves into this position. And we've seen Southampton go down. They've not been good enough all season. And maybe it'll do those players good to be in the Championship and to stay together, and maybe they can come straight back up. All I think of when a team goes down now is the financial stress that it puts on the owners and the... and obviously, you struggle to keep your best players, obviously, when you go down because they need to raise money and funds.
Relatively new owners as well, and I think that inexperience has perhaps shown in the way that the club has been run over the last year or so.
Yeah, look, they've freshened up nearly every part of the club, and it's shown. There's been an element of naivety and lacking of know-how and going around the block. Hasenhüttl was doing okay at the start of the season, but it wasn't deemed good enough. I've been there as an owner myself, where you think it needs to be better, and then you make it worse. I've done it, so I get it. And I'm in a situation now where I look at Southampton and think, right, okay, I just hope they've planned really well for Championship football. They've had a number of months to think that we might go down, and that they can financially just stabilise themselves. They can keep a nucleus of their young players that they've signed together, and that they can be in a good situation to be able to come straight back up again.
Talking of new owners, we'll finish up with Chelsea have now seemingly done a deal with Mauricio Pochettino. And what's your reaction to that?
Todd Bowley is not a new owner. It feels like he's been in about 200 years. We've talked that much about him. I love Pochettino, so I can... Look, I said a couple of weeks ago, I think it was Monday Night Football, maybe on this podcast, that they could be Mauricio Pochettino away and refining the squad and adding one or two more players to it in the right positions that they're short in for him having a very good season next season. I think Mauricio Pochettino will not take a job on where he didn't think there is huge potential to get Chelsea back up to the very top of the league. And he's done it at Tottenham. It's not a too dissimilar situation to what he faced at Tottenham, where he had a group of players that didn't run as much as he wanted them to. They may be a bit older than he liked. And now he's going to have a group of younger players at Chelsea with some older players, maybe don't run as much as he'd like them to, maybe not as organised as they should be, haven't got the patterns of play that he'd want. But I think he can put it into them very, very quickly. And appointing him early and getting him in place and getting him, looking forward to pre-season and the plans, the recruitment and what they're going to do, bring some stability. He will bring stability straight away because he won't have any nonsense in and around him. All that stuff about owners turning up in the dressing room, Mauricio Pochettino isn't going to have that. He isn't going to accept that. So I think from that point of view, it's a really good move. It was him or Ten Hag when obviously Manchester United were reappointing. At the time, because I knew Mauricio Pochettino, I said that I felt as though that would be a great appointment. But Erik Ten Hag was also a hugely talented coach. He had a great first season. So Manchester United couldn't really lose, in my opinion, out of those two. And I don't think Chelsea can lose with this appointment. He'll make massive improvements straight away, I feel.
What he has to do is trim the squad. I mean, how's he going to be able to do that? Surely it won't just be his choice. I mean, they've got players in the last 3 months, 4 months, who are on long-term deals, and he might not. You can't go with 31 players again next season, surely.
I think that because Mauricio Pochettino's been going to Chelsea now for 3 or 4 weeks, and they've been in negotiations, it's felt like, for 3 or 4 weeks. I don't think that will have been about his package or his backroom team. I think that will have been about, you're going to buy into what I want to do with this squad, because he'll have looked at them meticulously, Mauricio Pochettino, and his recruitment people around him and his staff, and they'll have said, right, these are the players I want on the bus, these are the players I don't want on the bus, and you better back me, else there's no point in me coming in. And I suspect that's where the negotiations been probably centred in this last few weeks about, well, how much money are we actually going to lose out of all this money that we've spent straight away? and we'll have to write off a lot of our investment because he might not want some of those players. They don't fit into his ideology of what a football team
They're
looks
on
like.
7-year contracts, some of them.
I know, but they're going to have to basically suck on the lemon, the owners, and back a manager who knows what he's doing, who's done it at Southampton, who's done it at Tottenham, who's obviously had a different type of job at Paris Saint-Germain, but that experience will have helped him, I'm sure, in terms of his experience, of his managerial journey. And he's coming back to Chelsea. I think that the owners have set out with Graham Potter for a long-term project, and it's not worked. But I think with Mauricio Pochettino, they can set off on that long-term idea, with that long-term idea as well, because he thinks that way, Mauricio Pochettino. I don't think he coaches for today. I think he coaches for that 3-4 year period and tries to build a body of work and success. So I think that it's a good appointment by Chelsea, and they've needed someone who can be a face of the club, who represents consistency, reliability. They've not had anything this season that's been reliable. You said last week they've sacked the groundsman, they've sacked the sports scientist, they've sacked their sporting director, they've sacked their manager twice.
Pretty much every department's been pruned, I think, yeah.
And so if you look at the whole club, it's just been washed out. So from that point of view, they need somebody who can stand out there that everybody respects and that everybody sort of can say they've got some authority. And Mauricio Pochettino has that.
Gary, thank you.
Thank you, Martin.